13.8 billion years ago, the Big Bang happened. This was the beginning of space, time, energy, and the four fundamental forces, which are gravity, electromagnetism, and strong and weak nuclear forces. Elements were also formed. The first element that was formed was hydrogen. These hydrogen atoms started to fuse together, making helium, and the process just went on and on, until one day, 4.8 billion years ago, the sun was formed. Other stars began to form, and the number of supernovas increased. Furthermore, creating more and more and eventually all of the elements from the periodic table of elements. And as time passed, 4.55 billion years ago, the Earth was formed. The Earth was formed from the debris of the birth of the Sun. The Earth back then did not look like the Earth that we live in now. The first Earth was very molten and was called the Red Earth. Eventually, the Earth began to cool down and it was known as the Black Earth. And after that, the Earth was a water planet, and we refer it to as the Blue Earth. Eventually, the Earth started to look more and more like it does today. The first cell life began 3.8 billion years ago, and then after that, for 2.3 billion years, Earth had single cells as its only life form. Then came the cyanobacteria. The cyanobacteria photosynthesized, so the Earth's atmosphere went from having no oxygen to having oxygen. And then after that, which took millions and millions of years, came the evolutionary process. So, the sequence of evolution of life from cells to mammals looked somewhat like this. Prokaryotes, eukaryotes, sponges, fungi, jellyfish, worms, horseshoe crabs, trilobites, invertebrates, fish, amphibians, reptiles, and then mammals. But all of these life forms can't exist and couldn't have existed without the sun. The sun is by far the most important source of energy for life on Earth. Energy is what makes things move, get hot, shine, make noise, burn, and explode. Energy comes in the form of heat, light, sound, electricity, potential energy, kinetic energy, chemical energy, X-rays, microwaves, radio waves, infrared waves, and ultraviolet waves. Energy can be stored in batteries, springs, anything that can fall down, and chemical bonds. Photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process used by plants and other organisms to convert light energy, normally from the sun, into chemical energy that can be later released to fuel the organism's activities. The plants take in carbon dioxide and oxygen, plus the sun's energy, and produce glucose and oxygen. So this is what goes on in the plant. The sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water go into the plant, and then the plant cells work to produce oxygen and glucose for the plant to function. The balanced equation for photosynthesis is 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O plus sunlight yields C6H12O6 plus 6O2. The chloroplast is used to obtain sunlight and convert light energy into chemical energy, or food substance, for the plant. The mitochondria is used to release or produce a form of energy. So both the chloroplast and the mitochondria give out energy to the plant. One of the waste products of photosynthesis is oxygen. And that oxygen is what we breathe in. And that brings me to cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is the process in which we eat food and inhale oxygen, and our body produces energy and exhales carbon dioxide. So the balanced equation is C6H12O6 plus 6O2 yields 6H2O plus 6CO2 plus energy. The respiratory system. So it is preferred to breathe through the nose because after the air goes into the nose, it goes into the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is filled with cilia, which are little microscopic hairs that filter the air. They also warm and moisten it. After the air goes through the nasal cavity, it goes into the pharynx. And then the air goes through the larynx, which contains the vocal cords, and then to the trachea. And then after, it goes into the bronchi, and then the bronchi branch out into both of the lungs and form bronchioles. In the lung, each bronchiole branches to form tiny sacs that are called alveoli. These alveoles are surrounded by capillaries and is where oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged. However, since our lungs have no muscles of their own, breathing is done by the diaphragm and rib muscles. Cardiovascular system. The heart. The heart has two chambers, the right and the left, and it pumps blood all throughout the body. First, the superior vena cava brings oxygen-poor blood from the body into the right atrium. Then, from the right atrium, the blood flows into the right ventricle. From there, the blood goes to the pulmonary artery and then to the lungs. In the lungs, oxygen moves from the alveoli into the blood in the capillaries. At the same time, carbon dioxide moves from the blood in the capillaries into the alveoles. While that process is taking place, at the same time, the left atrium receives oxygen-rich blood from the lungs, from the pulmonary vein. And then it flows from the left atrium to the left ventricle. And then blood from the left ventricle goes to the rest of the body through the aorta. The red blood cells then collect the waste products of the body cells and return them to the heart, and then the process just continues on and on. The digestive system. After we eat food, the food goes down to the pharynx. After it goes in the pharynx, the food goes down the esophagus into the stomach. The stomach breaks down food into a liquid by the action of muscles, enzymes, and acid. Then the food goes into the small intestines, and that is where most of the breakdown of the food happens, and most of the nutrients from the food are absorbed. The small intestine is covered by villi, and the villi are covered with tiny nutrient-absorbing cells. Once the nutrients are absorbed from the food, they enter into the bloodstream. Undigested material enters the large intestine as a soupy mixture. The large intestine changes the liquid into a semi-solid waste material called fetus. The rectum is the last part of the large intestine. The rectum stores the fetus until they can be expelled. Fetus passes to the outside of the body through an opening called the anus. There are parts of the digestive system that the food does not pass through. These are the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, and the salivary glands. So, when plants photosynthesize, their waste product is oxygen, and that's what we breathe in.
When the animals eat the plants, they get glucose from it and nutrients. And we eat the animals as well and get nutrients.
Our digestive system processes the foods and absorbs the nutrients. And nutrients go into the blood. And our respiratory system helps maintain the carbon dioxide and oxygen levels in our body. Animals are dependent upon plants for their energy.
Since plants make glucose from sunlight, people are ultimately dependent on the sun for the energy needs of their body cells.